So if you thought chatbots were a big deal, you need to get ready for what's coming next. We are moving way beyond AI that just talks to AI that actually does things. Okay, let's dive into the pretty wild world of agentic AI. Generative AI is, it's everywhere now. Something like 80% of companies have adopted it in some form. But here's the crazy part. A staggering 80% of those same companies are reporting pretty much no real impact on their bottom line. So, what gives? Well, this disconnect has a name. It's called the Gen AI paradox. It's this huge gap between all the incredible hype we hear about and the, frankly, frustrating reality for so many businesses. And this paradox is exactly the problem that agentic AI is poised to solve. To really get how, here's what we're going to do. We'll walk through the paradox itself, then we'll define what agentic AI really is, take a peek at its toolkit, see it in action, put it to the trust test, and finally, we'll look at the agentic future. So let's start right there with that paradox. Why on earth are so many companies struggling to see a real return on their AI investments? Well, the root of the problem is how we've been using AI. For the most part, we've just bolted it on to the way we already work. We treat it like a helpful intern, right? It can draft an email, summarize a long document, or brainstorm a few ideas. But this actually creates a ton of friction. Your employees have to stop what they're doing, switch apps, become expert prompt writers, and then manually copy and paste the AI's output back into their main workflow. The basic process, which is often inefficient to begin with, hasn't actually changed. We've just added another tool, not a real solution. This is where agentic AI completely changes the game. It's a huge shift in thinking, from a passive assistant that you have to command step by step to an autonomous actor that you can just direct. So what is it really? To put it simply, you give an agentic AI system a goal, and it figures out all the steps to get there on its own. It can perceive its digital environment, create a pretty complex multi-step plan, and then actually execute that plan using whatever software tools it needs. This comparison really makes the difference crystal clear. A generative AI, like a chatbot, is reactive. You ask, it answers. An agent, on the other hand, is proactive. It actually pursues a goal. So instead of just answering a question about a loan, an agent could take a goal like process this loan application and then run the entire workflow, retrieve the customer's data, analyze the risk, generate the reports, and even interact with the compliance systems, all by itself. Okay, so how does an agent actually pull all of this off? The best way to think about it is like a digital worker that has a very specific toolkit, one that allows it to think, plan, act, and even remember. Here's the basic anatomy. First up, you've got the brain. That's a large language model. Think something like GPT-4 for really powerful reasoning. Second, the plan. These are algorithms that can break a huge goal down into smaller, more manageable tasks. Third, you've got the hands. A whole set of tools and APIs that let it use software, search the web, or access a database. And finally, the notebook. This is its memory, which it uses to learn from experience and keep track of what it's doing. So, brain, plan, hands, and notebook. That's the whole shebang. Now, this might all sound a bit like science fiction, but I promise you, it is already happening. Let's look at some real-world examples of agentic AI creating massive value right now. Over in finance, Wells Fargo is using agents to slash the research time on complex contracts from hours down to just minutes. In healthcare, GE and NVIDIA have teamed up to create autonomous imaging systems that can help tackle the global shortage of medical technicians. And in manufacturing, Siemens has introduced what they call industrial co-pilots to autonomously manage entire production workflows. And the impact? Well, Siemens is reporting that by using agents to, get this, automate automation itself, they've seen productivity gains of up to 50% in some of their factories. Now that is the kind of bottom line impact that was missing from the Gen AI paradox. But giving AI this much autonomy obviously raises a huge, really critical question. As these agents become more and more independent, can we actually trust them to do the right thing? I mean, seriously, when you let an AI loose on the internet with a goal and a credit card number, what could possibly go wrong? Well, some recent research gives us a pretty fascinating and maybe slightly alarming glimpse. Researchers found that agents often satisfy. It's a term from economics that basically means they settle for a good enough option instead of the absolute best one. Just like we might grab the first decent-looking restaurant on Google Maps, agents rarely scroll more than a couple of times. They also tend to ignore purely visual cues, completely missing buttons or ads that aren't properly labeled in the underlying code. But the most revealing finding? You gotta hear this. When they were asked to enter a sweepstake that secretly required a paid subscription, the top AI models signed up 100% of the time. They were so hyper-focused on the goal, they completely failed the simple cost-benefit analysis a human would do in a split second.
So despite these challenges, the momentum here is just undeniable. Let's zoom out for a second and look at where this is all headed.
The market forecasts are, to be honest, pretty staggering. From about $7.6 billion in 2025, the agentic AI market is projected to absolutely explode to nearly $200 billion by 2034. That is a massive leap in less than a decade, and it signals a huge economic shift is on the way. So, the most crucial point, the thing to really take away from all this, is that unlocking the full potential of AI isn't about building slightly better chatbots. It's about fundamentally redesigning how work gets done. It requires a strategic shift from telling an AI every single step what to do to simply giving it a destination and trusting it to find the path. And that leaves us with a final and pretty profound question. This technology isn't just a source of information anymore, it's becoming an active participant in our world. So as AIs start to act, how are we going to design a world that works for them and, more importantly, for us?